Hello, my name is Arsha and I'm from 8D. And in this video, I'm going to teach about how to do factorizing. So for to start, there's this equation ax squared plus bx plus c. It is a common equation and you can find it uh, a lot in algebra. So in this equation, there are three terms or three of these. This one, and this one. Usually the first one is squared, the second one only has one variable, and the last one is just one number or letter. But in this one it says a and b, but then usually it's a number. So for example, there's this version of this original equation. So for the first one, the coefficient is the number beside a letter. The coefficient beside the variable is 1, so it's just x squared. But then it can also be more than 1. So for this one I wrote 2x, but it can be any number. And then this one is just t. So in algebra, in this video is going to teach about factorizing. So in factorizing, there's different methods to do it. So first one is HCF. HCF stands for highest common factor. It's like the largest number that multiple numbers can be divided by. So for example, like 20 and 10. So these two numbers, they have factors. And 10 has 1, 10, 2, 5. 20 has 1, 10, 2, 10, and so on. But then you see that both of these numbers can be divided by 10. So you can circle this, because if 10 is divided by 10, it becomes 1, and 20 divided by 10 becomes 2. So that is HCF. There are three identities which are important. A plus B whole squared, A minus B whole squared, and A plus B, A minus B. The first two are called the PST or perfect square trinomials, while the last one is called difference of two squares. So the first two, if you're confused how to get it, you don't have to do A plus B squared, but you can just do A plus B, and then you multiply it, and expand it. So A times A is A squared, A times B is AB, A plus B, and then plus B. So when you add them together, it becomes A squared plus 2AB plus B squared. And then it's the same for this one, the second identity. The only difference is because the sign is negative, so when you multiply it, first it's the same, but then when you multiply A with negative B, it becomes minus AB, and then same with this, becomes minus AB. But then because this is minus with minus, it becomes positive B squared. So for this second identity, this is how you get it. By doing this, so it becomes A squared minus 2AB plus B squared. You can notice that in the outcome, the first sign depends on the sign of the equation. So for example, the second identity, the sign is negative, so the first sign is also negative. The sign in the first identity is positive, and then the second identity is also positive. But then you can also use it to do other equations. So if you see an equation like this, x squared plus 6x plus 9, or any number, you can solve it by relating it to the first identity. So you notice how this is like the a in the first identity, so let me write it out. This is a squared plus 2ab plus b squared. So the x is a, the 2ab is 6x, and b is 9. But then in equation like this, usually the b is already squared. So when you write it, could be x, but then you put brackets whole squared plus 6x plus 3 squared. But if you want to factorize something like this, you can turn it into like the first identity. So when you factorize it, it becomes x plus 3 and x plus 3, which will become x plus 3 whole squared. Because you see, if you want to factorize it using the identity, all you have to do is just take the first variable, and then you take the second one, and then you relate them to the identity. So since this is identity 1, which is two numbers and or variables which are positive, so it becomes the x is like a and 3 is like b. So it's basically the same as a plus b whole squared. So you can see the difference, the similarity. Now the third identity is a plus b, a minus b, and it actually equals a squared minus b squared. So when you multiply it, instead of like this with the 2ab, because when you multiply it, it's a squared and then minus ab, but positive ab, and then minus b squared. So when you simplify it, it's the first start is the same, but then you notice that this is a negative added with the positive, and when negative, for example negative 1 is added with positive 1, it becomes a 0. So then it's basically like this doesn't really exist, so it becomes, you just take the 2 and then you minus b squared. So this identity can also show up in other things, like for example in 25 plus minus 9. So that this is like the identity, because usually there will be a whole square. You can see this is like identity 3, because the 9 is like the b and 25 is like the a, but when it's like this, it's already squared. So if you want to factorize this, first you have to find the square root of these two numbers. So for this one, it's 5, which is the square root of 25, minus 3, which is the square root of 9. And then you have also, don't forget to put a bracket and then whole squared. So after that, if you want to factorize it like you did with the other two identities, all you need to do is get two brackets, and one of them is positive, the other one is negative. Take the first number, which can be a, and the second number, which can be b. So it's 5 plus 3 and 5 minus 3. So that is how you factorize something that is similar to the third identity. So if you ever see an equation like this where it's sort of similar to the first one, where the first one is, the first term is equals 1, because there's no coefficient beside this, so there's only, for example, 1p, and then you see in this example it's p squared plus 10p plus 9. So to factorize these types of equations, you can do a method called the cross method. Here I already wrote it out. So in the cross method, you try to find how much be in the bracket if you were to factorize it. In the cross method, it's like a plus shape. In the first column is the first term. In this case, is the p, and then this is the second column is for the third term, which is the 9, and then the last one is what you get when you multiply the variable in the first column with the second column. So this is 9p and p, but first you have to multiply each one of them in their own columns. So for this one, in the first column there's p times p, which equals p squared. So you see it's correct for this. Then it's 9 and 1, which equals 9, which is correct to the third term. And when you multiply this, you get 9p and p. And when you add them together, so the cross method is an effective method and it can help you get the answer. But if you have a different number, say this is just but if you have your number isn't a prime number, because this one is easy, you just have it with 9 and 1. If your last number isn't a prime number, you may have to use multiple cross method. So it's like if you have 4, you can either write in the third column, and I mean in the second column, you can either write 2 and 2 or 4 and 1. But as you can also notice, these ones have the first term with one value, so that makes it easier for the cross method, because in the first column you don't have to worry about it writing it down. So for example, if the first term is not equals to 1, then it's, for example, you have 6p, and then in the cross method you can either write 6p and p as the factors, or you can write 3p and 2p. So you see in the cross method, if the first term is not equals to 1, it's gonna be harder. So this one I only had to write p and p, so it doesn't matter which order I put them in, because when I multiply them it's gonna be the same either way. But if I have to put if I had to decide whether it be like, for example, 6 here, or 2 here and 3 here, then it's gonna be more difficult. So in equation like before, there's also another version where you should do HCF, which before it's a highest common factor. So you see in this equation it's 4x squared plus 4x plus 8, and you notice that they all have the common factor, and here it is 4, because 4 can be divided by 4 and 8 can be divided by 4. But the factor can't be x, because 8 doesn't have x. Even if the other two does, 8 doesn't, so it can't be x. So what you write is, you write the 4, because this is the highest common factor, and then you write the rest of it. So 4 times, how much do you have to multiply 4 to get this? So this is 4x squared plus x plus 2, because 4 times x squared is this, 4 times x is this, and 4 times 2 is 8. So after that, what you do is you do the cross method on the one in the bracket. You just don't do anything with this one, but just remind to have it and don't forget about it. So after you've done the cross method, you can end up with something like, for example, this. So after you have something like this, that is basically it for the equation with the HCF. Because if you want to find it out, then just multiply it and expand.